Have you ever wondered what Jesus meant when he said, "No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment," or "No one puts new wine into old wineskins"? Welcome to Bible time today. Let's take a look together. The parables of the old garments and old wineskins are parables Jesus taught when the disciples of John the Baptist asked him about fasting. So what does clothing and wineskins have to do with fasting? In this video, we'll explore the meaning and application of these parables and how it can inspire us to live the way Jesus taught us to live. The parables of the old garments and wineskins are found in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Let's take a look at each of them. First, Mark chapter 2, verses 21 through 22. Jesus said, "No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. If he does, the patch tears away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear is made. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is destroyed, and so are the skins. But new wine is for fresh wineskins." Next, in Matthew chapter 9, verses 16 to 17, Jesus said, "No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch tears away from the garment, and a worse tear is made. Neither is new wine put into old wineskins. If it is, the skins burst, and the wine is spilled, and the skins are destroyed. But new wine is put into fresh wineskins, and so both are preserved." In Luke chapter 5, verses 36 through 38, Jesus says, "No one tears a piece from a new garment and puts it on an old garment. If he does, he will tear the new, and the piece from the new will not match the old. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins. If he does, the new wine will burst the skins, and it will be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. But new wine must be put into fresh wineskins." So what is Jesus talking about? I love these parables. It all sounds so simple, right? These are things that you probably don't have to be told, or you were told once, or you figured it out yourself doing it the wrong way, and you'll never do it that way again. Now, I've never patched a garment or gotten involved with wineskins, but I still get the idea. Maybe you've heard of measure twice, cut once. It's something like that. But these wouldn't be parables if they didn't mean something more than just what they say, right? Jesus came to show us a new way, or better said, the way. In fact, that's what Christians were called before they were called Christians. They were called followers of the way. This new way was very challenging to the people that were in charge of spiritual life at the time of Jesus. Jesus gave us these parables as a way to communicate the way will be different from how it was being done at the time. How was what being done? First century Jewish people had many customs, rituals, and ways to live their lives. There were a lot of rules. Salvation was said to be obtained through works or deeds. If asked, what does righteousness look like, they would often point to the priestly class of intellectual Jewish scholars at the time. There were two groups in particular. You might have heard of them before. They were called Pharisees and Sadducees. They were a political religious group of Jewish people that were the authority of spiritual matters during the time of Jesus. They were dedicated to the study of the law, or the law of Moses, and they believed that following all the rules was the way to righteousness and salvation. This is the concept known as legalism. There were a lot of rules. Just try living by them, and you're bound to fall short. Here's a little test. Take a look at the tag in the back of your shirt. If you see that it's made out of more than one kind of fabric, you go straight to jail. Well, maybe not to jail, but you would have broken one of the laws. Some of these laws and commandments do have a real impact. The 10 Commandments come to mind. They're simple, straightforward, practical, things you would want to have in your community. You wouldn't want people running around committing murder and stealing. That wouldn't be good. But some of these laws, like the one about garments made out of 2 different kinds of fabric, those sound a little strange. So imagine you're studying and working really hard your whole life to become a Pharisee. All these laws, all these rules, these customs, these ways to live your life. And then this Jesus guy shows up and says, he's the way. So how do we know that the parables of the garment and the wineskins are about Jesus showing us that he is the way? Look no further than the Bible. In fact, most of the time, the things that get you scratching your head about what Jesus says or what you read in the Bible, you can find answers to those questions in other places in the Bible. The Old Testament doesn't keep Jesus a secret. In fact, he's all over the Old Testament. Jesus himself talks about that and gives us several direct references to it. For example, in John chapter 5, verses 46 and 47, Jesus says, "For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote of me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" And then there's that mic drop moment in Luke chapter 4, verses 16 through 21. "And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And as was his custom, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, and he stood up to read. And the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, 'The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.' And he rolled up the scroll and gave it back to the attendant and sat down. And the eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. And he began to say to them, 'Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing.'" Another reference is that moment when Jesus was on the cross and says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Now, Jesus wasn't making some delirious, dying nonsense statement. He was referring to Psalm 22. Chapter and verse numbers weren't added to the Bible until much later. It was in the 1200s that the Archbishop of Canterbury started putting in chapter numbers. Then verse numbers followed later. Before that, people knew things like the Psalms based on the first line. If you haven't read Psalm 22, you should pause this video, go read it, and then put in the comments who you think it's talking about. The prophet Jeremiah foretold of the Messiah coming and there being a new covenant. In Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 31 through 34, it says, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor, and each his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more." Jesus himself told us he was the way in John 14:6, where Jesus says, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." This new way wasn't going to just be more of the same. Not just another prophet, just another punishment, but a whole new way. The context of this parable helps us understand it better. In the Gospel of Matthew, this question comes right after the call of Matthew, when Jesus was eating with a group of tax collectors and sinners. Seeing this, the Pharisees asked Jesus' disciples why their teacher eats with tax collectors and sinners. The answer is in Matthew chapter 9, verses 12 and 13. But when he heard it, he said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I came not to call the righteous, but sinners. The same event is recorded in the Gospels of Mark and Luke. Note, in Mark and Luke, you'll see the name of the person being called as Levi. This, in fact, is the same person as Matthew. If you're not familiar with people having 2 or more names in the Bible, get used to it. It happens a lot. For example, Simon, who was called Peter. So naturally, when Jesus was asked why he wasn't hanging out with the Pharisees and Sadducees and instead tax collectors and sinners, Jesus gave them a quick jab about well people not needing a doctor, but rather a sick person. He wasn't genuinely complimenting the Pharisees and Sadducees, and that brings us back to our parables for today. When the disciples of John the Baptist asked Jesus about fasting, his response was a way to communicate that his coming was ushering in a new way, the way. Instead of fasting, sacrifices, and all the legalistic practices of the time, Jesus came to tell us that he was the way to the Father, the way to salvation. So now that we've read the parables of the Old Garment and the Old Wineskins, and looked at other places in the Bible that give context and add dimension to those parables, I hope you now have a greater understanding of what they mean. I also hope that this has made you curious and wanting to read the Bible more for yourself. Remember what Jesus said when he was asked which commandment is the most important of all. That's in Mark chapter 12, verses 30 and 31, where Jesus said, "And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There is no other commandment greater than these." God is real, and he is who he says he is. He created you. He loves you. He wants to make himself known to you. If you want to get to know him, I encourage you to read your Bible. So thanks for watching today, and don't forget to make time for the Bible today.